Final Fantasy Type-0 is an action role-playing game developed and published by Square Enix. It was first released on PlayStation Portable on October 27, 2011, and a Western release for PlayStation 4 and Xbox One titled Final Fantasy Type-0 HD was confirmed at E3 2014. Type-0 is part of the Fabula Nova Crystallis subseries, a set of games sharing a common mythos which includes Final Fantasy XIII and Final Fantasy XV. The gameplay is reminiscent of Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII, with the player taking direct control of characters and taking them on missions and large-scale battles. The game focuses on the stories of Class 0, a group of 12 magic-endowed students from the Peristylium, a magical academy in the Dominion of Rubrum. One day, the Milites Empire launches an assault on the other nations of Orience, seeking to control their respective crystals. When Rubrum is attacked, Class 0 are called into action and become entangled in both the efforts to push back and defeat the forces of Milites, and the secret behind the war and the existence of the crystals. The setting and presentation was inspired by historical documentaries, and the story itself was written to be darker than other Final Fantasy titles. The game was originally announced as a title for mobile phones called Final Fantasy XIII. It is directed by Haim Tabata, who also directed Before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII. It was designed to provide players with easy access to the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos. The game was eventually moved onto the PSP and its title was changed to distance it from Final Fantasy XIII, the subseries flagship title. The game has received strong sales and positive reception in Japan. The game has also inspired two manga, a prequel and a retelling of the game's story. A companion prequel game for iOS and Android, Final Fantasy XIII, was released on May 14, 2014 in Japan. Gameplay. The gameplay of Type-0 is similar to the gameplay of Crisis Core, Final Fantasy VII. Players control members of Class 0 across both the world map and environments rendered to scale with the characters similar to Final Fantasy XII and XIII. Players are sent on missions across Orience during the course of the game, both related to the story and independent of it. The player originally travels to preset destinations in the world on an airship supplied by the Suzaku Peristylium, but they eventually gain their own airship which can be freely navigated around the world map, after defeating a powerful enemy guarding it. While outside combat, players can help breed chocobos, recurring galliform birds in the Final Fantasy series. Players must capture 2 chocobos on the world map and take them to a special ranch within the Peristylium. By pairing certain chocobos and added specific items, a special kind of chocobo can be bred for use. As players progress through the game, they can visit the Suzaku archives to review defeated enemies, character information, in-game lore and special video clips. The game features a multiplayer option, where players can assist others within missions. The first and last segments of the game are not open to multiplayer, instead being single-playing only. Type-0 uses a real-time, action-based battle system similar to Crisis Core. The player is allowed control of 3 characters, being able to swap between them at any time. Characters are given optional orders that can be obeyed or ignored as the player chooses. Characters lock onto targets while attacking, but can easily switch targets between attacks. Each character has a specific weapon, and as the character levels up they can perform special attacks unique to them. During combat, characters are able to perform precisely timed attacks during the period when an enemy unit is attacking, the break sight, which deals high damage, and the kill sight, which kills a standard enemy with a single blow. 3 characters can also be commanded to use a Trinity attack, combining their attacks to deal higher damage to a target. There is no limit placed on how many times the Trinity attack can be used in a mission. Aside from human enemies, the game features recurring monsters in the series such as Katoa, Malbora and Toneberry. Alongside enemies encountered in missions, there are special enemies that can be encountered while exploring the world map. Defeated enemy units drop Phantoma. The color of the Phantoma indicates what aspect of the character it will recharge, be it HP or magic points. Phantoma can also be used in the game's leveling system, the Alto Crystarium, to strengthen a character's magic skills. The game's magic skills are split up into 5 basic groups named after types of guns. Holding down the assigned action button increases the power of the magical attack. Many combat situations involve time challenges. Success rewards the character, while failure drains their health. If a character is killed in battle, the player can instantly select another to replace it. The game features an arena where practice fights take place. While these fights are not against real foes, the characters continue to level up and gain Phantoma after the battle, and 20 battles can be arranged at any one time. Each character has their own summon called War Gods, which are summoned in place of a playable character and have their own set of skills. Doing so empties the selected character's health gauge, removing them from battle until they are revived at the Peristylium. After a limited time in battle, the summons are dismissed. Those available to players are series staples Shiva, Ifrit, Golem, Odin, Diablos and Behemoth. Each summon has variants of their original forms, many of which are unlocked as the game progresses. The main gameplay is split up into a mission-based structure. The 2 types of missions encountered are the main, story-based missions and practice missions, which act as side quests. Mughals, another recurring creature in the series, hand out missions to the player. The objectives of missions change during gameplay. Players can also engage in large-scale battles on the world map, with the player taking control of large allied military divisions. Missions also involve liberating cities and towns from enemy forces, giving the player access to new shops and information from NPCs. The large-scale battles are most often encountered in the practice missions. The player also receives optional orders. Should they be accepted, the characters receive a temporary power boost, and completing the objectives yields rewards. Timed aerial missions are also available where the characters shoot down attacking dragons using their airship's weapons. Players are able to transfer save data from the game's demo to the full game, in order to unlock special costumes, items and keep experience points. After completing the game once, players unlock a new Game Plus option. In this mode, people can keep their stats and weapons from the previous playthrough, while also unlocking story scenes and character-specific missions. A secret alternate ending is unlocked once certain conditions are met. Characters can continue to level up though activities within the Peristylium while the PSP is in sleep mode, as long as the game's cartridge is inserted and the batteries are not flat. Plot, setting, Final Fantasy Type-0 is set within Orience, a land divided between 4 nations, a fiefdom of Rubrum, the Milites Empire, the Lorican Alliance, and the Kingdom of Concordia. Each nation has its own emblem and is blessed with a crystal that grants them unique powers. Rubrum controls the Suzaku crystal containing the power of magic, Milites controls the Byako crystal containing the power of science and weapons, Lorica controls the Genbu crystal containing the power of the knights, and Concordia controls the Zaraya crystal containing the power of dragons. Each nation has an academy, or Peristylium, to research and protect the country's respective crystal. The crystals have the ability to mark humans as their country's servants. These servants, called Li, are branded with a symbol and are given a focus, a task to complete. However, while blessed with long life and the ability to transform into crystal, Li are cursed to lose their memories over time. The people of Orience also lose their memories of the dead so they will not be held back by any past regrets and continue strengthening their souls through conflict, a mechanism put in place by the crystals for the convenience of the deities who crafted them. The main aim of several characters is to become a Jito, a legendary figure who will apparently appear and save the world from Finis, an apocalyptic event that will destroy Orience. Characters. Final Fantasy Type-0 has 14 selectable characters, who are all members of Class 0 that are based from the Suzaku Peristylium. The first 12 are card wielder Ace, flute wielder Deuce, the archer Trey, magic gun wielder Kater, the mace wielding Sync, scythe wielder Psyche, whip wielder 7, martial artist 8, spearman 9, katana wielding Jack, swordswoman Queen and dual pistol wielding King. The last 2, Makina Kunajiri and Rem Tokimiya, double as narrators and the focus for the game's main subplot. Supporting Class 0 are their mentor Kurasame Sasawa, and Arishia Al-Rashia, Class 0's former mentor and the overseer for magical development at the Peristylium. Other important characters from Rubrum are Kalia Shivalsix, the current leader and headmaster of the Peristylium, and the Likaichuna. Multiple figures from Milites, led by High Commander Sid Eilstein, and later Gala, leader of the Lulazath army, act as the game's main antagonists. Other major characters include the Lorican Lee Gilgamesh, the Concordian Queen Andoria, and her Lee Knight Celestia. Story. The story begins when High Commander Sid Eilstein leads the forces of the Milites Empire in a campaign against the other three nations of Orience. After first conquering Losera, the Milites forces attack Rubrum and Concordia. Using a crystal jammer, Milites renders Rubrum's crystal of magic useless, allowing them easy entry. This act provokes Class 0, an elite class who draw magic from their souls instead of the crystals, to drive back the forces of Milites from Rubrum's capital. During the conflict, Izana Kunaduri, Makaina's older brother, is killed. Class 0 defend their homeland under the guidance of Kurasame and Orishia al-Rashia, with Makaina and Rem joining them as new members of the class. Orience is soon consumed by war, with Milites devastating Losera's capital with a magical bomb and Rubrum making an alliance with Concordia. The fighting is temporarily stopped when Queen Andoria uses the power of her nation's crystal to force a ceasefire. Class 0 go to Milites for the signing of a peace treaty, and during their time there, Makaina learns that Class 0 are indirectly responsible for Izana's death, and that he was planted in Class 0 by Rubrum's leader to spy on Orishia. Following these revelations, Makaina vows to become strong and protect Rem himself, who is secretly suffering from a severe illness. Andoria is assassinated by Milites in order to spark hostilities between Rubrum and Concordia. Framed for Andoria's death, Class 0 goes on the run, managing to find refuge in Lorica before being transported back to Rubrum. During this period, Makaina becomes a Byakoli to protect Rem, and is eventually forced to abandon Class 0. Concordia and Milites form an alliance against Rubrum, led by Andoria's former protector Celestia. Rubrum steadily pushes back their forces into Lorica, where Class 0 defeats the Lee Gilgamesh. Finally, Kaichuna summons the Grand War God Alexander using the sacrificed lives of Rubrum's students and soldiers, including Kurasame. Though she dies, Alexander decimates the forces of Concordia, Lorica and Milites, allowing Rubrum to conquer the three nations and emerge as the victor of the war. Soon after this, due to the imbalance caused by Rubrum's complete dominance, a force called the Lulazath army, led by Gala, arrives and begins slaughtering the population of Orience. Class 0 go to the Palace of All Magic, where Gala has possessed Sid and become the Arbiter of Lulazath, the instigator of Finis. The Arbiter puts them through trials to test their worth. At this point, Class 0 are offered the chance to become Lee by the Suzaku crystal. If they agree, they are thrown into battle against the Lulazath army and die. In the canon ending, the 12 main members refuse, and Rem becomes a Suzaku Lee when the crystal's protector dies. Makaina and Rem end up fighting each other. Rem is mortally wounded, and she and Makaina turn to Crystal. Severely weakened by the trials, Class 0 face off against the Arbiter. Though initially helpless before him, Makaina and Rem's spirits give them the strength they need to absorb the Arbiter's life force and halt Finis. Mortally wounded by the conflict, Class 0 spend their final minutes imagining their possible post-war lives. On a second playthrough, further plot elements are revealed. The land of Orience is trapped in a stable time loop created by Orishia and Gala, the respective servants of the deities Pulse and Lindsay, as part of an experiment to find the gateway to the afterlife. While Orishia tries to use powerful human souls to find the gateway, Gala attempts to force it open by killing hundreds of people and creating a flood of souls. The crystals were created to help in their plans, creating Lee to protect themselves and erasing the memories of the dead from the living to remove any kind of burdens they might feel. Sid's actions in each cycle were motivated by his wish to free the land from the crystal's control. Each time, both Orishia and Gala failed, Finis arrived and the world was reset for another attempt. By the events of Type-0, the experiment had already been performed over 600 million times, and the current Class 0 had been chosen by Aricia through Operation Apostle, a means of finding Agito, the souls powerful enough to perform their assigned task. When he learns of his role in Gala's plan, Sid kills himself in an unsuccessful attempt to prevent himself being used as the Arbiter. After Class 0 refuses to become Lee, altering the course of events, Aricia convinces Gala to call off his warriors. After the Arbiter's defeat, the souls of Class 0 speak to Aricia, who revives Makaina and Rem and allows the people of Orience to remember their past, ending the cycle of war. The crystals then fade, Makaina and Rem unite Orience and rebuild the world. Years later, Makaina records the events to ensure they are never repeated, and dies with Rem by his side. In an alternate ending, Aricia has a change of heart and decides to remove the crystals from Orience's history. This creates a new timeline where the war never occurred and Class 0, along with all the other characters, are able to have happy lives. Development. The decision to create the game, originally known as Final Fantasy Agito XIII, was made after the other two Fabula Nova Crystallis games had already been decided upon, and was made in response to the popularity of the mobile phone game before Crisis, Final Fantasy VII. Haim Tabata, who also contributed to the game's core mythos, was searching for a new project at the time after finishing Before Crisis and became the game's director. It was decided to make the game exclusive to mobile phones. The original staff members were Tabata, Yusuke Nora and Tetsuya Nomura. Nomura acted as a character designer and creative director. Development was slow due to most of the team being devoted to the third birthday. Kosei Ito, the producer of Before Crisis, was also originally involved. Unveiled at E3 2006, the game was meant to offer on-the-go access to the Fabula Nova Crystallis universe, utilizing gameplay functions exclusive to mobile phones of the time. Developers had been planning a release on the next generation of cell phones as phones available at the time could not offer all the capabilities they would need. An issue developers had grappled with was whether or not to make the command buttons used in the game visible. The game was in development with the idea of making it a full-fledged numbered game. The game's plot was thought to be massive, and was described as an online RPG, but not massively multiplayer. Other concepts being developed were a day-night cycle and calendar system linked to real-world time and dates. Agito XIII was still in its early stages in 2008, and facing serious development problems due to the scale of the project. Later, the team decided to make it a full video game, facilitating its platform move from mobile platforms to the PlayStation Portable. The platform change was officially announced in 2008, along with the discontinuance of development on the mobile version. The game's name was also changed to Type-0 to distance it from Final Fantasy XIII, as the two games did not have much in common apart from their shared mythos. The Type-0 trademark was registered in December 2010. The game's logo was created by regular series artist Yoshitaka Amano, while the kanji symbol used in the logo was drawn by Nora, who also designed the Shinra logo in Final Fantasy VII and its companion media. The game made its first official public reappearance as Type-0 at the Square Enix first production department premiere in Tokyo, along with a new trailer that was released to the public on January 27, 2011. The name Type-0 was originally trademarked by Square Enix in Europe on December 29, 2010 along with the logo. The game be one of few releases for the PSP to be released on UMDs. This was attributed to the large amount of spoken dialogue in the game. Due to the size of the project, debugging the game took far longer than anticipated. While the game was still known as Agito XIII, Tabata described it as a major title that's formed from a variety of concepts, which include the collision of four fantasies, a killing match between magic and weapons and the ordinary and extraordinary. Its original title, Agito, roughly translates from Latin into to put into motion. The early story concept drew heavily from multiple manga and anime, but little survived after the platform change, with Tabata instead opting for a new documentary style, primarily inspired by Japanese documentary Centuries of Picture. They also used war films as inspiration for its story, which was darker than many other Final Fantasy games. Despite its title change, the game was still kept within the mythos. The story's concept started with the idea of a war story told by young people caught up in the event. The writers then mixed in the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos with themes of the weight of life, which formed the base for the game's world. It would show a broad, historical view of how the Fabula Nova Crystallis deities mingled with and manipulated humans, while also telling a story more focused on the human struggle than Final Fantasy XIII. The roles and stories for each character in the game was conceived and put into place after the main story and worldview had been created. After the game's release, Tabata commented that he would have liked to be more thorough the story and make it easier to comprehend. A sequence was planned involving the Mughal squad known as the Cranberry Knights, but the main scenario writer Hiroki Chiba forgot to put the sequence in. Music. The music was composed by Takeharu Ishimoto, who also composed the music for Before Crisis, Crisis Core and The World Ends With You. Ishimoto asked the opinions of both Tabata and Nomura regarding its concept and genre, while basing the music around themes of war, life and death. For Type-0, Ishimoto fused the orchestral score with the choral work, while also rearranging leitmotifs to create more variety in the score. Like Crisis Core, he created the music to have a dark and heavy feel, but used less rock songs to promote a feeling of immersion. One of his primary instruments for the score was the acoustic guitar. The game's theme song, Zero, was composed and performed by Japanese rock band Bump of Chicken. The band, who were big fans of the Final Fantasy series, were contacted by Square Enix to compose and perform the song and agreed readily. This was after the platform move on to PSP, but while the game was still titled XIII. While looking for inspiration, the band were able to see mid-development screenshots of the game. One of Tabata's suggestions for inspiration was the theme song for Centuries of Picture, Is Paris Burning? By Takeshi Kako. The band composed multiple versions of the song for use in different areas of the game, and at the request of producer Amano's logo artwork was used for the single's cover. Final Fantasy Type-0 original soundtrack was released on October 12, 2011 under the catalog number SQEX102813. The soundtrack was released in an standard edition, and a limited edition that could be purchased both separately and with the collector's edition of the game. Zero was released as a single instead of being part of the main soundtrack. The soundtrack has received positive reviews, with both dedicated music outlets' original sound version and game OST, and gaming site RPG site giving both individual tracks and the work in general high praise. Tracklist, literal translation of the original titles appearing if different. Localization, Type-0 is notable due to the long gap between its original and international releases. During its development, Tabata stated he was trying to appeal to North American players in the direction of the game. An international version was reported to be in the works by Tabata in the game's official Ultimania guide. Tabata has stated that the team experimented with an HD port during the game's development. He later commented that the main reasons for the game not coming west was the flagging PSP market and the uncertainty of the Vita. In the wake of the game's release in Japan, OneUp.com and Joystick speculated that the game could be successfully brought west as a port to the Vita. In November 2012, an alleged voice actor for the game said that English voice recording for the game was completed in late 2011. In 2014, Orion Akaba, the English voice actor for 9, revealed that the voice recording was completed in 2012. In an interview with GameSpot in November 2012, Tabata stated that Square Enix was taking a clean slate in terms of their plans, stating that if there was demand, a Western release would be considered. During an interview with UseGamer in September 2013, Tabata, commenting on both Type-0 and its prequel XIII, was hopeful for a Western release. He said that the planned Western release of XIII and the reaction of the fan community to both games had become a deciding factor, and that while the project had not been officially greenlit, it was in its final stages of preparation. He also clarified that the game would not make the transition onto mobile devices or the PS3 as an HD remaster, remaining instead a portable title. A localized high-definition version of the game was officially announced by Square Enix at Electronic Entertainment Expo 2014 for XBOX1 and PlayStation 4. An unofficial fan translation of the PSP version was released just prior to E3 on June 9, 2014. Square Enix issued a cease and desist order to them in July of the same year, resulting in the fan translation being taken down. An official English version for the Vita was momentarily announced by the official PlayStation blog, but was clarified as erroneous less than an hour later. The false announcement ended up causing a large negative reaction from fans of the game who were hoping for a port to the Vita. Reception: PlayStation Portable. In the first week after its release, Final Fantasy Type-0 sold 472,253 units. As of January 16, 2012, the game has sold 746,203 copies in Japan. The title's commercial success prompted Square Enix to add it to their Ultimate Hits title list. It was the best-selling game of 2011 for Japanese media retail shop Tsutaya, beating Monster Hunter Portable 3rd and Final Fantasy XIII 2. The game was awarded a near-perfect score of 39 out of 40 by Famitsu, praising the story and characters, the multiplayer and the smooth experience. The game also received a positive review from Dengeki magazine, where 4 reviewers gave it 90, 90, 95, and 90, each 1 out of 100, averaging out to 91.25 out of 100. They praised the game's volume and the tense combat, though found the camera and navigation a little less appealing. PlayStation Lifestyle's Heath Hindman gave the game a score of 8/10, calling it a hell of a game with praise directed towards the game's music, combat, and story. RPG site's Aaron Van Dune was very positive in an import review of the game, complimenting its old-school atmosphere and careful handling of the Fabula Nova Crystallis mythos, general gameplay and presentation, comparing it favorably with console titles in the series. Legacy: during the development of Type-0, several staff members and voice actors who had worked on Final Fantasy X came together, and the concept for Final Fantasy X X2 HD Remaster originated during their meeting. At a special event in September 2012 dedicated to the Final Fantasy series, Tabata presented a joke video for a dating game version of Type-0 called Tokimeki Final Fantasy, featuring a young Kalia Shival in a leading role. In September's issue of Famitsu, Square Enix revealed Final Fantasy Agito, a prequel to Type-0 for iOS and Android devices. The game was released on May 14, 2014, and a localization was announced alongside that of Type-0. After Type-0's release, Tabata stated in an interview that he wished to explore the distant history of Orience after being freed of its cycle. Trademarks for Type-1, Type-2 and Type-3 were registered shortly after the Type-0 trademark, but it was suggested that they were simply protective in nature. The team making Final Fantasy XIII 2 initially planned to create a plot-based link to Type-0, but the idea was dropped. See also, Final Fantasy Agito, Fabula Nova Crystallis Final Fantasy. References. External links: Final Fantasy Type-0 official website, Final Fantasy Type-0 manga introduction at Gangan Comics, Final Fantasy Type-0 novel index at Gangan Comics.